Right. Okay. So let me go to the recent one, batch 57. Right. Okay. So let's discuss about the security, guys. Very important. Right. Um, Security is very important. Okay. Of course, every concept is important, and security is also important. And security, generally, if we discuss completely, it will take okay, one complete session, one and a half complete session, guys. Sorry, sorry. Okay. So security, generally, if you discuss from the scratch, it will take one complete session, one and a half, sometimes one and a half, sometimes one session also it will take, sometimes even two sessions also it will take. Harishankar, that is not the correct one. Magnetically stabilized, fluidized bed. What is that, Harishankar? MSDB means magnetically stabilized, fluidized bed.
Actually, I was searching something, so that's why.
Fluidized means like cephalic and something happened to the surgery, right? To control the fluids in the back. Maybe that's why you're getting that fluidized bed and right. So it's not the correct one, Harshankar. Okay. So anyone tried, guys, MSDB full form?
Actually, one of my brother has said that Microsoft database admin
No.
is actually working in organization. So he
Everyone
told
will
me that.
think that the same Microsoft. MS means Microsoft. Then why they are giving that Microsoft name to that optional system database? If it is really Microsoft, they can, MSDB means if it is Microsoft database, that is not a so critical database. Master is there, model is there, okay, tempdb is there. These are the critical databases, right? Only for the databases, the database why they mentioned as MSDB, which is Microsoft database. Now you got the logic. If it is so critical, then they can give their name. As it's not critical, how come they will give their Microsoft name to that system database? Multi-source database. No, rather. Any other trials, guys? Anyone tried searching what is MS stands for in the MSDB?
Move the SQL Server database.
Move the SQL.
Actually,
Next.
I got so many.
Good, good, good. Ah, fine.
Management service database.
You can try, guys. As it is related to some what I can say, jobs and all jobs maintenance plans comes under which concept generally? Jobs maintenance plans will comes under which concept generally? Which criteria or which category? Kind of maintenance, right?
Automation.
Automation.
Maintenance.
Maintenance, right? Maintenance, right? Correct,
Maintenance.
right?
Maintenance service database.
Maintenance and scheduling database. Okay, we'll schedule the jobs. Okay,
Yes.
maintenance and scheduled. Okay, so that is what MSDB stands for. You don't get this okay definition anywhere, guys. In the Google also you'll not get it. Okay, so not multi-source. Someone said the fluidized bed and all. I don't know what is that bed. So where we can get that bed and all, I don't know. Just check it once. Fine. So maintenance, storage. Sometimes they will tell maintenance and schedule also. Schedule will schedule the jobs, guys. Okay, so that's why it's a kind of a scheduling. Fine, no issues. So let's jump into the security. Very important concept, guys. Don't worry about the security. It is easy only. Okay, I'll tell you security uh, completely. We'll discuss from end to end first thing, and at the end of the security, again how we will deal the security related tickets. So that is a kind of a 5 to 10 minute session. So I'll complete the security in 1 to 2 complete sessions. After that, I'll also take a separate 5 to 10 minute session. That itself is enough for security. Why? Because from security side, as a DBA, what we are going to do, guys, we'll create the logins, we'll give the permissions, we'll add the logins into the particular server roles, and we'll add the users into the database roles. We'll give the access on the server level. We'll give the access on the database level. We can also give the access on the table level. Crispy, like all these things, we'll discuss at the end of the security session again. That 10-minute session is enough. But to get the knowledge, you have to listen carefully how the security things will work internally, how you are logging into the SQL server. When you are trying to log in, what exactly happening in the OS level, okay, where it is checking the password. Without password, how a user can able to log into the SQL server in the Windows authentication. What is a Windows authentication? What is a SQL authentication? What is meant by authentication? What is meant by authorization? What is the principal? What is the securable? Server roles, database roles, okay, and all these things will be discussed, guys. Type of logins, individual Windows login, SQL login, group login, okay. So all these things will be discussed completely, but don't worry if you don't get this. Wait for that 10-minute session. That itself fine to manage the day-to-day tasks, guys, okay. Chalo, now when you are trying to connect to the SQL server, for example, this is my instance. I am trying to connect to the instance, guys. When I am trying to connect to the instance, what I'll do, I'll give the instance name here.
We'll give the server name.
Yeah, I'll give the instance name here. Of course, I'll choose database engine. I'll give the instance name here. Here, I can connect to the instance in two ways. One is either Windows authentication, and the second one is or SQL authentication. I can use either Windows authentication, and I can also use SQL authentication. Okay. If you choose Windows authentication, it will not ask any password. You can directly connect it. If that is the case, as it is not asking the password, so where is the security? Everyone is able to connect to the SQL server, right? As it is not asking any password, they can simply choose Windows authentication and they can connect. It is not at all asking any password. If you remember, this concept we have already discussed last week, guys. Okay, I explained with the diagram also how a Windows person will log into the SQL server and how a SQL login will log into the SQL server. Okay, this is how we discussed earlier last time. Okay, so if you are a DBA, you will directly connect to the server. There you will open SSMS and then you will directly connect to the instance in the Windows machine itself. But the RDP will allow you only two connections at a time. If I am connected, one more person can be connected at a time. Either he can be a DBA, he can be a Windows team, he can be a network team, he can be a storage team. RDP will allow only two connections at a time. But how hundreds of developers will connect to the servers? How hundreds of developers, how thousands of developers will connect to the servers? How thousands of users will connect to the server? They are going to use SQL authentication. So in their local laptop, SSMS, only the client SSMS will be installed. Server will be somewhere else. The server can be in the US, the server can be in the UK or Singapore or Australia or Mumbai or Hyderabad, somewhere else. But still, okay, the developer in her laptop or in his laptop or the user laptop will simply install the client. Windows team will install client, okay, in their particular laptop. So developers, what they will do, simply they will open SSMS in their local laptop, the office laptop. They will give the server name here. If they want to connect to this server, they will give the server name. Imagine if this is batch57 instance, okay, they will give this server name. And if this is named instance, okay, batch57 backslash SQL 2019. Okay, they will simply give the name. But listen carefully, they cannot directly give the name and they cannot connect, guys. If she wants to connect, imagine she is Swati. If she wants to connect, her login should be existed in the particular SQL server, guys. Her login should be existed in the SQL server. If her login is present in the SQL, see guys, if you want to use Gmail, while logging into the Gmail, if you don't have Gmail account, can you connect to Gmail, guys? Is it possible? Can you
No.
connect to Gmail?
No.
You should have an account, right? First, without having Gmail account, how can you log in? Which username you will give? Which password you will give? So if you give the username and password, where it will verify? Right? When you are giving your username, the Gmail username and password, that means already in the Gmail database server, your account is created, right? And when you are trying to connect to the Gmail using the same password, it is validating whether the same username and the password is matching or not. If same username and the password is matching, then it is allowing you to connect to the Gmail. That doesn't mean you are not maintaining the Gmail servers. Gmail server is somewhere else. It might be in the US, it might be in the UK. We don't know where it was exactly. But still, how you are able to connect to the Gmail? By using your account. If you sign out from the Gmail, what will happen? Gmail servers are not going to be shut down, right? You are just connected to the Gmail. You completed your work and you are coming out from the Gmail. So if you have a Gmail account, then only you are able to connect to the Gmail. SQL Server is also the same concept. If anyone wants to connect to the SQL Server, it's not like just they can connect. It's not like that. Okay, their account should be created in the account in the particular SQL Server first. So how come this guy, when I'm trying to connect to this SQL instance, how come this guy, you can see here username, it is not asking username. That doesn't mean it is not taking the username. When you logged into the Windows machine, when you, for example, I'm just disconnecting, guys. I'm just disconnecting now. Now I'm trying to log into this machine again. So I gave the server name, right? And I'm connecting. So while connecting, I'll give the username right here. While connecting, definitely what I'll do, I'll give the username. So where I'm giving the username, for example, more choices and use a different account. Okay, I'm giving the username. Now I'm giving my username. TRATOR administrator is my username. And I'm giving my password. Now this password, now whatever credentials I'm giving, this password, these are the OS level passwords. So if administrator user is there in that server that I am trying to connect, this server, which one? This server, this server. In this server, we have a user called administrator and the password while installing the operating system, I gave one password, right? So I am giving these the username and password. As administrator is already created in this machine, by using that account only we are trying to connect. So that's why it will allow you to connect. Means OS level, when I am giving the password, when I click connect, now it is validating OS level whether a successful user, whether I am giving the correct username, whether I am giving the correct password. So it is validating in the OS level. Means OS level, you are already a successfully verified user. So that's why you can see here who logged into this machine, guys. Who logged into this machine? Who logged into this?
Administrator.
Administrator logged into this machine. You can see here. If you click on the Windows button, you can see here administrator is logged into the machine. And if any other person, like if, for example, if Hari, while connecting here in the RDP section, Hari can give his own name and his own password. If Hari account is there, very simple example, we are all using our own personal laptops. When you start your laptops, it will ask you to give the password. Which password it is asking, guys? Which password it is asking? When you install the OS, that shop, whoever installed this OS operating system, they will give your username and password. So you are giving that password to log into your personal laptop. So in the same way, when we install the Windows Server, we'll use one default account, that is administrator. But generally we don't use administrator in the organization. You will have your own account. So Hari will have his own account. When he's trying to connect to the server using RDP, the username will be something hari.shankar and the password will be, the Windows team will give the password. Once Hari is deployed into any project, they will create an account for Hari to access the servers and they will share the credentials with you. Okay, that credentials you are going to use to connect to the Windows servers. So now in my case, I gave the administrator username, I gave the administrator password. So OS level it was successfully verified. So that's why I'm able to log into this machine. Once it was verified successfully in the OS level, I gave you one example also, shopping mall. When you are going to the shopping mall, at the beginning itself, they will check. Okay, when you are going to the shopping mall, when you are entering inside the shopping mall, the main gate itself, they will check. The security checks and all will be done. Okay, once you are into the shopping mall, once you completed all the checks, again there will be no checks for every shop. So Windows Server is a kind of a shopping mall. So now OS level, okay, at the entrance gate, which is OS level, you are already successfully verified user, so you are able to log in. So Shanmukh, I have a quick question. So whoever is able to log into the Windows machine, they all can connect to SQL servers? No. Now see here, which account it is using, guys, to connect to SQL server? Which account it is using? Which account? Can you see the username? Windows administrator. See here, administrator account it is using. Remember when you install the SQL Server, we will add current user. So it will create an entry in the SQL Server with that account. As it is already created an entry, I told you right in the Gmail, if you want to access your name should be there in the Gmail database. So that's why you are able to connect to the Gmail in the same way. Not to, as it is not, even though it's not asking, but still it is going to take the username as an administrator. You can see here already this user is created and you already gave the password on the OS level. That's why it is not asking any password if you choose Windows authentication. If any Windows team is connected, if they are using same account, yes, they can connect. Generally, we don't use like this accounts. We'll use the login accounts with the respect to names. If Kitesh is working on the server, he will have his own personal account to connect to the servers. If Mauni is working, she will have her own account, okay, with her name and all. So everyone will use their own accounts. So it's not like they will give a separate, they will give a common account that everyone can log in. Why? Because if administrator is deleted any database, how I can track which person deleted, which DBA deleted the database? It will simply show you administrator only. Correct? If you are using your mom's or your dad's ATM, so what generally in the transactions, what it will show? They will think that your dad withdraw some money or your mom withdraw some money. Even though you are using the ATM card, machine don't know, right? A machine just knows which ATM card it is, on which account it was. So just if you just insert the ATM card and if you give the PIN, that's it automatically in the transactions. It will show you like your dad deducted the amount, withdraw the amount. So in the same way here also, if you use the username, a common username, we cannot track it. Who deleted the database, who deleted the objects and also everyone will get a separate account to connect to the servers with your own names. So if I connected with the Shanmukh account and if I deleted the database, it will be easily tracked. If Kirtesh connected and he just deleted a table, it will be easily tracked. So that is how it will be managed. We don't use common accounts like administrator and all in the organization, guys. That's how Windows authentication will work. Windows level, you are a successfully verified user and the same account is created for you in the SQL Server. So that's why while connecting to the SQL Server, when you choose Windows authentication, it will just take the username, but it will not ask you the password. As it is not asking the password, that doesn't mean everyone can connect. Who are there in the logins list, they only can connect to the SQL Server. Is it clear, guys? Everyone? Any questions
Yes.
so far? Are we good, guys? Any questions? Okay, so now let's discuss one by one. There are few terminologies, guys. Authentication and authorization. Authentication and authorization. So what is this authentication and what is this authorization, guys? Let's discuss. Okay, so authorization means what? When you go to any shopping malls, okay, are you going to be allowed to access every corner of the shopping mall, guys? No, right? Only for the shops you are allowed or washrooms you are allowed. Any movies are there, you will be allowed. Are you going to be allowed to the power room? Right? No. So even though you are a user, based on the, see, to the shopping mall, the workers will come, cleaning boys will come, users will come. Users means like customers will come. So everyone will come based on their duties. If he is working as an engineer, he will go to the power room. His work is there in the power room. If he is from cleaning section, he will have access to some extra rooms. If you are just a customer, you will have an access to only that shops or washrooms or movies kind of thing. So based on your roles and responsibilities, the objects that you are accessing is different. So here also authorization means what? Sometimes you can see on the doors authorized entry only. What it means, guys? What is the meaning of
Those were
authorization?
permissions.
Right.
Only few
Permission.
allowed.
Correct. Having access on some resources is called authorization. Authorization. Having access on some resources is called authorization. For example, on the server room, you can see authorized entry only. So who can enter? Only authorized persons can enter into the server room. Correct? Now, while entering into this room, there is a separate mechanism to unlock the door, right? Sometimes we'll use biometric to unlock the door. Sometimes we'll use pin based authentication will be there to unlock the door. Sometimes we'll use password. Sometimes we'll use face recognition. Sometimes we'll use swiping cards. So different ways we can unlock the door, correct? So that is called authentication. Process of verifying username and password. Process of verifying username and password. See, in the Gmail example, having Gmail is called authorization. And logging into the Gmail, while logging into the Gmail, you will give username and password, right? It will verify username and password, right? That process is called authentication. Are you getting the point, guys? Authentication means process of verifying the username and password is called authentication. Here, whatever we have the authentication. So how it is verifying? If you give Windows authentication, Windows level it is verifying. If it is SQL Server authentication, SQL level it is verifying. So for that you have to give a separate username and password. If that username and password is exist, whether it is a Windows authentication or SQL authentication, remember one point, the persons who are there in this login list only can log in. Can I log in with, for example, I want to log in to this machine using Kalyani and password, something password, I'm not sure which password it is, so I'm just using this. Can I connect to the SQL server now, this instance? Is it possible?
No.
No, not possible. Why?
But while we
Don't
are
have
installing,
account.
we have given Windows authentication. We have not given the mixed mode authentication, right?
Is that the reason?
And there is no login.
Very good.
No, sir,
That is
there is
Here
the,
there
no
is no
account.
login created
no,
also.
There is
that
no
is
account.
whatever the mentioned statement for the first time, that is different. Okay, that is
Okay.
separate, but very simple thing is there is no entry for Kalyani here.
Okay. So login has not been created here. So that's the reason.
That's why she is not able to connect to the SQL server. If
Yeah.
I click connect also, she cannot connect. Why? Because, okay, let me connect to this trust server certificate. She will get a different error. Okay, 18456 error. So
Okay. 18456.
this is very
Login.
common. Yes, this is very
Yeah.
common error in the security. 18456 error is very common in the security. I'll tell you in what scenarios we'll get the 184. Why? Because the reason can be Kalyani is not present in any of this logins list. So that's why definitely Kalyani cannot connect to the SQL server. If Kalyani is present, then she might can connect to the SQL server. So authentication, see, process of verifying, authentication, process of verifying your username and password. So in two ways it can verify. One is OS level, that is called Windows authentication. So OS level it will verify. So that's why again it don't ask the password. And another one is SQL level. So SQL server level, if you give the username and password, it will verify now. Okay, so that is called process of verifying the username and password is called authentication. Okay, is called authentication. So we have two types of authentications in SQL Server. We have two types of authentications in SQL Server. One is Windows authentication, which will verify, okay, which will verify in the Windows level. Second one is SQL authentication or mixed mode authentication. This is also called mixed mode authentication. Okay, SQL level, it will verify the username and password. If anyone wants to connect to the SQL server, a login should be existed with the username, then only that person can connect to the SQL server. Without, if that person is not part of the logins list, he cannot connect to the SQL server. That is for sure, guys. So any questions, any doubts so far, guys? Tell me here. Any doubts we have?
No.
Are we good? Any questions?
Mm, no.
Fine. So that is how it will work. Now let's try to understand a small concept. Okay. This is the Windows server. Important concept, guys. And this is the SQL server in the Windows machine. And let's go with one database. This is the database. So now let's try to understand this concept, guys. If any Windows user has to connect to this database, okay. So now let's go to this. 1 minute. Let me go back to this. People. Okay. So imagine if this guy wants to connect to the SQL server. Okay. If he wants to connect to the SQL server using Windows authentication, in the Windows level, we will have a separate users, guys. Windows level, we will have a separate users. If he wants to use Windows authentication, if he wants to connect Windows authentication using Windows authentication, if he wants to connect to the SQL server and database, remember, first what we have to do, we have to create an account for this guy in the Windows level. Okay, in the Windows level, what we have to do, guys, this is called Windows level users. Windows level users. First try to understand in the machine level. Then we can understand in the Active Directory level, guys. So now if this guy is a DBA, if this guy wants to connect to the this SQL server, first of all, an account should be created in the Windows level users. Then what he can do, he can log into the Windows machine. Guys, whatever laptops you are using, okay, you go and check here. Windows R lusr.msc local user manager.msc. Okay, now you are able to log into your laptops, right? See, I used one account called Hemant account. Hemant account. I used this account to log into this laptop. But if you go and check the local users manager section, and if you go to user section, see here, as Hemant is there in this laptop, that's why I'm able to log into this laptop using Hemant account. You go and check in your laptops also. Your name, whatever name is there, okay, that name will be visible in this user section. As this name is existed, then only you are able to connect to the laptop using this name. If someone deleted this name, if anyone is going to delete, or if someone deleted this name, you cannot use Hemant username. Why? Because the username itself is deleted. If anyone deleted your Google account, backend, in the backend, if someone deleted your Google account, can you log into the Gmail? In the same way, see, SQL server level we discussed it, right? Who are all part of this logins list, they only can connect to the SQL server. Correct? Is this clear, everyone? Is this clear?
Yes.
Correct. Now,
Yes.
who are all part of this LUSR MGR window, they only can connect to the server. or laptop. Clear? Now, whatever user account you are using to log into your laptop, that is already part of this section. That's why using the same account, existing account. Otherwise, where it will verify your username and password when you are trying to log into the laptop? Where it will verify? It has to verify somewhere, right? When you are giving a PIN to enter into the Windows machine, where it is verifying, how it is validating your PIN? As this is the part of the LUSR MGR section, so that's why it is validating. Okay, while when I rebooted my laptop, when I started my laptop, it is asking Hemant username and password. So I gave Hemant username and I gave Hemant password. So I'm able to log into this. So in the same way, here also, if someone wants to connect to this SQL server using Windows authentication, first they have to log into the Windows machine. What is this, guys? This is the Windows server. Okay. First they have to log into the Windows server. So if they have to log into the Windows server means what? They should be part of LUSR MGR section, right? LUSR MGR.MSC. Those who are part of this LUSR MGR.MSC, they only first can log into the Windows machine. Logging into the Windows machine will give you the access to SQL Server, right, guys? Is it going to give the access to SQL Server? Logging into the Windows machine will give you the access to the SQL Server. No.
No.
No, not at all. Logging into the Windows, a Windows guy can log into the Windows machine. A storage guy can log into the Windows machine. A network guy can log into the Windows machine. So they are not able to connect to the SQL Server. Who can connect? Who can connect, guys? If you are part of the SQL Server logins list, okay, imagine this is the SQL Server logins list. So once your account is created in the Windows level, will give you SQL Server login. As a DBA, will create an account for this guy in the SQL Server. So now this guy, now he can connect to the SQL Server, guys. Is it clear, everyone? Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
When I create an account for any guy, then only he can connect to the SQL Server. Connecting to the SQL Server will give you the access to all the databases, guys. No. The answer is no. Okay.
No.
Even though you're able to connect to the SQL Server, still based on your roles and responsibilities, I can limit your access. I can limit your access to database level. I can limit your access to table level. I can limit your access to object level also. This is how the security will work. Even though you can log into the SQL Server, that doesn't mean you can do everything. Even though you entered into the shopping mall, that doesn't mean you can do anything. Correct, guys? Now, what I can do, if you want to access, imagine this is the Amazon database. Okay, imagine this is the Amazon database. This is the PhonePe, Flipkart database. So log into the SQL Server doesn't give you access to the all the databases, guys. Okay, based on your requirements. Again, as a DBA, what we have to do? We have to give the access to the database level. We have to give the access to the database level. Once I give the access to the database, then only you are able to connect to the particular database, guys. When I give the access to you on any database, what will happen, you know? When I give the access to any database to your login, what will happen, you know? A user will be created in every
Yeah.
database. Remember, a login cannot enter into the database, guys. A login cannot enter into the database. Then how, Shanmukh? On behalf of login, one user will be created in the database. This user will help this login. Are you getting the point, guys? Are you getting the point? Everyone, is it clear? So when I gave access to
No,
you, when I gave access to you on any database, when I gave access to you on any database, okay, then a user will be created with the same name. For example, okay, for Radha, this person is Radha. He wants to connect to the SQL server using Windows authentication. Using Windows authentication, he wants to connect. So what I have to do? Windows team first they have to create his account in the Windows level. Then he can log into the Windows server. Then SQL server level. Okay. Then once Windows team is created an account to Radha, then as a SQL DBA, I will create an account to Radha in the SQL server logins list. But Radha can connect to the SQL server, but Radha cannot, okay, access the databases. Radha cannot access the databases. So in that scenario, again I have to give the access to Radha on individual databases. Once I gave the access to Radha on any individual database, small Radha will be created here. So Radha Windows level user, Radha SQL login, Radha database user. Are you getting the point, guys? The difference.
Yes. Yes.
So somehow if anyone deleted this login, can Radha connect to the database? No, his
No.
login is deleted. If you deleted the parent login, these persons will become, if there is no parent,
Child
no
log
check.
user.
Not child.
orphans.
Fun user.
Orphans. Okay, for example, like any user Mark. Okay, Mark wants to connect to the SQL server using Windows authentication. So we'll create an account to Mark. Will means Windows level, right? Windows team will create this. The whatever Windows level users, this is not our headache. Windows we cannot create. We are not authorized persons to create. So Windows level people they are going to create it. So once they created the Windows level account for him, then we'll create a SQL login for him in the SQL server level, and then based on his roles and responsibilities, if we can give sysadmin access to him so that he can access all the databases, or if we need any specific access, we'll directly give access to a specific database. So once the Mark login is created in the SQL server, I'll give access to this Amazon database to Mark. Once I gave access to Mark on Amazon database, Mark user will be created in the database level. If this is grandfather, father, and children. Are you getting the point, guys? How the relation is? Grandfather, father, and children. If someone deleted this Mark login, these two people, Mark user in the Amazon database, Mark user in the Flipkart database, two orphans will be created. If Mark is having two children, if Mark login is not present or Mark login is deleted, those two children will become orphans, right? So Mark orphan user. To understand the concept, that's why you have to concentrate. Why? Because sometimes when you are doing migration and all, okay, you might get orphan users issues. When you are restoring a database, you will get orphan users issues. So to understand that, you have to be very clear here. Any questions here, guys? Any questions, doubts?
Sir, when we will do you will do the practical, it will
I'll
be
show
more
you.
clear.
I'll show you. Of course, Farooq. Why don't I show you? Tell me. For
Yeah, Shanmugh, here in a sense, logins is for server level and user is for database level, right?
correct, correct.
Okay, okay. So we need to map the users here.
That's why that is called user mapping in the database. Okay, if you
Okay,
see an
okay.
option called user
Yeah,
mapping in
now
the
I got it.
database, user mapping to which database you are mapping this user, that is called user mapping.
Okay, okay. I got it.
Guys, please don't hesitate. You can ask any doubt. Is this clear or not? Very important concept this is. This is how the security will work.
So, Samuk,
Sure.
when we will get when we will get the issue of orphan user, when we will delete the logins of
Yes, when you see, now I'll tell you, there is a separate session. We have a separate session for the orphan users. When we delete the login, that is one case, and you will restore the database, right? One database you will restore from one server to another server. When you restore
yes, yes,
the database level object, user is also database level object right now. All the database level
yes,
objects will
yes.
be moved. Okay, so if the mark is
Yes.
present in one city and if you just take the children to another city, still mark is not present, like the user mapping is disconnected. So these people will become orphans, right? So when I restore this Amazon database in another server, if I restore, okay,
Yes.
the database objects, including database users, also will go. But in this server, if there is no mark,
That's why. Yes. Yes.
They
I
become
understand.
orphan users.
Yes.
right? See, only database I restored in another server. There is no mark login here. So this guy will become orphan user. So when you restore any database or when you delete the login, in these two scenarios, orphan users will be generated. Clear, guys? Any questions, doubts so far?
Clear.
Shanu, if you are an admin at a local level, right, and you also have SSMS installed, when you're signing into SQL using SSMS, do you have to put password or just
See, it depends upon his login. That doesn't mean only if SSMS is installed, that is always the secret authentication. In the laptop, how you logged in? If you logged in using your username and same username is created in the SQL server, you can choose Windows authentication. If it is a SQL login, you can choose SQL authentication. Developers also can use Windows authentication, guys. Don't think only DBAs will use Windows authentication. Developers also can use Windows authentication. They will use Windows authentication. Here, if you understand this concept, there is an extension to this concept called Active Directory. We don't create mark. Why? Because if this is the scenario, I have to create mark. This is one server, so I'll create in one server. I'll create an account for mark in one server. If I have 1,000 servers, I have to create 1,000 marks like this. If I have 10,000
So
servers, 10,000 marks I have to create. So that is not a good practice. To understand the basic level first, slowly we'll go, right. This is machine level. Slowly we'll go to Active Directory level in the future classes. So we don't create multiple users in each machine. Will there is a global machine for the security. We'll create user in the particular global machine, and that will be able to log into all the machines. This concept will be explained during the Active Directory sessions. Don't worry.
So we have to create an user in Active Directory.
Correct.
Okay.
Windows team will create.
Yes.
Guys, is this as of now? Forget about orphan users. There is a separate session. If you understood this, we will discuss about the orphan users later. Okay. Is this clear so far? Any doubts, questions? If it is a SQL login, simply what we will do, imagine. Okay. If it is a SQL login, we don't need to create any account in the Windows level. We'll directly create an account in the SQL level. Okay, we'll directly create an account in the SQL level, and then what we will do, we'll give access. See, whether it is a Windows login or SQL login, at the end of the day, whether login is there or not, that's it. That we have to check it. So a Windows login also can be a sysadmin. A SQL login also can be a sysadmin. Okay, don't think Windows login will have more permissions, SQL logins will have less permissions. No. So any login can have a sysadmin. A Windows login can have a sysadmin. A SQL login also can have a sysadmin, guys. Clear? So when I give access to this, if this is a SQL login, and I can still give access to her on this database. So now how many users are there? Now how many users are there in this particular database?
Three.
two?
Two users are there. Okay, this is how, as the login is present for her, imagine she is Nancy. Okay, so for Nancy, if I give access to this database, she is able to connect to this database. As she don't have access on this database, she cannot connect to this database. She can only connect to this database. That's how we'll limit their access. Clear? SQL login, we don't need to create any Windows level users. Just simply SQL level if you can create. While logging in, they will simply choose SQL authentication. They will give their own username and password. They can connect to the SQL server, guys. That's how the security will work. Questions, doubts so far, guys?
Samuk, Orphan user scenario will come also in SQL login when we restore the
See,
backup
very
in
simple.
another server.
Now you tell me I deleted Nancy. It will come or not? You tell me. Actually, Orphan
Yes,
users,
come.
yeah, Orphan users is main for SQL logins only. Okay, so
Yes,
the
yes.
concept is simple. Okay, if login is not present, whether it is a SQL login or Windows login, when you give access to any login, it will create a user in the database. A login cannot enter into the database directly. On behalf of login, a
Yes.
user will present to help the login. If this login wants to read the data, he will request the mark user. Mark user is already present inside the database, so he will get the data for him. So
Okay.
even though if it's a Windows, even though it is a SQL, concept is same. So if you delete Windows login, if you delete a SQL login, any login, generally you'll get the Orphan users.
So only in these two scenarios, orphan users are created, or the
Generally,
admin.
only these two scenarios, okay, Orphan users will be created. When you delete a login,
Okay.
when you restore a database. Restore a database means what? In the migration also will restore the database. Okay, so in the migration
Yes.
also we'll get the Orphan users. Migration means what? Database backup and restore, right? So that is a technically it's a
Yeah.
restore. Okay, so only
Okay.
in these two scenarios we'll get the Orphan users. Clear,
Samuk, it
guys?
will be a answer. It will be a interview question, I think.
Yeah, of course, interview question. Yeah. Orphan users, don't worry, during migration, I'll tell you how to find the Orphan users and how to detect the Orphan users, in how many ways we can fix the Orphan users. There is a separate session, so that I'll tell you during migration so that it will be very clear. I can show you the Orphan users and all. Okay. So far, is it clear, guys? I'll take extra 20 minutes. I don't give any break. I'll leave you at 9 o'clock so that, okay, as it is a heavy kind of topic, I don't want to take till 9:30. So instead of giving a 15 minutes break, I'll simply, okay, we'll disconnect at 9 o'clock. In 20 minutes, we'll disconnect. Okay. So you can just take rest. Okay. Fine. Any questions, doubts so far? Right. So let's
Sir, if you
discuss
don't mind,
what, Farooq?
sir, if you don't mind, can you quickly
Hmm.
give a review of this orphan user, sir?
Forget about Orphan users, Farooq. There is a separate session. I'll tell you. Okay.
Okay.
Now is this clear whether when I create any login and if I give access to that login on any database? Very good. Super. ఇప్పుడు వేసుకో. Right. So now if you see slow Nana. Right. If you Farooq, just for you, okay? When I create a login and when I gave access to this login, a user will be created in the database. Is this point clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Clear, right? Right. When I delete this, this is a parent, this is a child. Agree or not?
Okay, sir.
Right. When I delete this parent, the associated child will become orphan. Agree or not?
Yes, yes.
One case. Second case, when you restore a database from one server to another server, only database will be restored. So
Okay.
user, you know that how this user is created, right? So user is also, you know, right, how this user is created. When I give the access to the login, the user will be created, right? You remember that point, right?
Okay. Yes.
Right. So when I restore this data, one case is if you delete the login, that is one case. Second case is when you restore this database, all the users that are there in this database also will be moved to the next server, right? So in this server, there is no mark. As there is no parent, this guy will become orphan, right?
Okay.
Clear? Right. Okay, fine. So now let's discuss about this. Yes, Farooq. Right. Now let's discuss about this principal and securable. What is principal? What is securable? Okay. Principal means having resources, like having access on some resources, guys. I mean to say, principal, the resources generally will call it as a securables. Okay. Simply accessing, who is accessing the resources? I'll rephrase like this. Who is accessing the resources is called principal, guys. Who is accessing the resources? Resource can be a database, resource can be a server. Who is accessing the resources is called principal. Okay. And which resource he is accessing? Which resource he is accessing? Okay, is called, that resource is called securable. Again, I'll repeat, having access on some resources. Who is having access? So who is accessing the resources? You can call him as a principal. Who is accessing the resources? You can call him as a principal. Okay, and which resources he is accessing? You can call the resources as a securable. Now tell me, Mark login is a principal or securable?
Principal.
Principal. Who is accessing? Mark. So Mark logins are principals, generally the other word. Which resource is accessing? He is accessing a table. Now table is what?
Securable.
Securable.
So securables, under securables, so Mark can access the server, Mark can access the database, Mark can also access a table. So all these are securables, guys. A stored procedure. Mark can access a table. Mark can object. We can simply call it as an object. So a securable can be a stored procedure. A securable can be a table. A securable can be a database. A securable can be a server or any other object, guys. So who is accessing the resources is called principal. Which resources he is accessing is called securable. Okay, clear, everyone?
Yes.
Right. So now let me quickly show you the demo first. Okay, I'll show you the demo so that you will get a clarity. Now I'm going to disconnect the server. Now security, logins. First what I'll do, I'll create a Windows login, guys. First I'll create a Windows login. Then I'll create a SQL login. So if I want to create a Windows login, what is the basic main criteria, guys? What is the basic criteria for Windows login? You can see on the screen.
Local
You have to have local access.
Very good.
to the
Windows
server.
user should be created. Windows user means what? Where I have to create Windows user? In the local user manager section. Okay, go to the server. Now you see here, open Windows R lusrmgr.msc. So now in this section, in the user section, tell me guys, who are there in the user section? Who are there?
Administrator.
Which is the familiar user?
administrator, default
And
account,
default
guest,
guest, WA.
and
Correct. Okay, administrator. That's why he's a default account. That's why I'm able to log into this Windows machine using administrator. Now, what I'll do, I'll create a new user. Okay, I'll create a new user. Username, I'll give him as Mark. Let's go with Mark only. Full name not required, description not required. Password, I'm giving the password. Guys, Windows level users will be created by the Windows team. Once they created a user in the Windows level, they will inform SQL Server. Then only will create an entry for them in the SQL Server level. So user must, I'm unchecking this, user must change password. I'm unchecking user cannot change password. Password never expires. I'm going to create the user first. Okay, now see here, Mark is created now. This task can be done by Windows team, only Windows team. We don't create users in the Windows level. Now, can Mark connect to SQL Server?
no.
No. Can Mark connect to Windows Server now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Why? Because who are there in this list can connect to the Windows servers. Blindly you can tell who are there in this list can connect to SQL Windows machines. Now let's connect to this machine using mark. Control delete. I don't want to give administrator username. I'll simply select. See, immediately once I created, I can see this username mark. Click on mark and let's log into this machine. Now Mark can log into the Windows machine. Why? Because his account is already present in the Windows machine. So Mark can log in. Now if Mark is opening SSMS, you can see on that. Let's log in to this machine completely. Let it load completely. We'll see. I'll show you. If you don't understand anything, no issues at all. Again, but don't be relaxed for the 10-minute session. Try to understand, which is very important. Okay. So if you click on this Windows icon, you can see Mark username now. So Mark is trying to open SSMS now. Right. Okay. You see here what username it is taking, guys. When Mark logged into the Windows machine and when Mark open any app, what username it is taking? Mark. Computer name / Mark. Okay. Now, can he connect to the SQL server? Can he connect to the SQL server? Tell me, guys, yes or no. Type your
No.
answers in the chat. In the chat quickly. Type your answers in the chat quickly. Can Mark connect to the SQL server now? Type your answers quickly. Right. Very good. Okay. So now all of you said no. Kalyani said yes. Why, Kalyani? Any specific reason? Okay. So if you see here, otherwise, let me open and see. Let me show you the logins list. Now, what is your answer? Is it still yes, Kalyani?
Can you refresh it?
Refresh. Okay. Okay. Fine. You don't believe me, right? Okay. Okay, Kalyan. Okay. You're not believing me, right? Now tell me. Now tell me.
I think no.
Why no? Okay, you think no only. Okay, but why no?
Yeah, but we have created for the Windows level, right? So it might connect. I think so.
So all Windows level people can connect to SQL Server, right? That is what we discussed.
No.
So if any user wants to connect to a SQL Server, what is the minimum requirement? What is the basic requirement?
They should have credentials. They should have
No. I'm asking
log.
Kalyani. If
Okay, sorry.
any
logins.
user, Kalyani, just please, okay, don't
Yeah.
mind, okay. So basic point. That's why because I'm struggling since 1 hour. So I'm just checking whether everyone is clear or not on this okay concept. So if anyone wants to connect to SQL Server, what is the minimum requirement? The minimum requirement. Or who can connect to SQL Server? Very simple question I'm asking. Who can connect to SQL Server? At least I'll open this notepad or notes document. You can see this and you can tell. You can see the answer on the screen itself. Now you tell me, who can connect to SQL Server?
You should present in the users like as user section.
User section.
You should have the you should have the SQL login
No, very good,
created.
very good. Now, can you see any Mark login is
Yes.
created?
No.
No, right? So now Mark can connect to the SQL Server?
No.
No, right? Now it is clear, right?
Yes. Actually,
Okay,
I
so
got little bit confused.
we
So,
just created the user Windows level. That doesn't mean, again, I just discussed this point multiple times. Again, I'm saying allowing or connecting to the Windows machine will not allow you to connect to the SQL Server. Simply connecting to the Windows machine will not allow you to connect to the SQL Server. If it is doing so, there is no security in the SQL Server. Okay.
yes, right.
Now it is clear, right? That confusion is clear, right? Even though you have confusion, very simple
Yes.
point. Anyone Windows login or SQL login, if anyone wants to connect, he should be part of this logins list. Everyone, is this clear or not?
Yes.
Okay. As Mark is not there, Mark can connect to Windows machine. That doesn't mean he can connect to SQL Server. If he wants to connect to SQL Server, his name should be present. So that's why when I'm trying to connect to the SQL Server, see, I'm trying to connect to the SQL Server using Mark login. Click connect. I'll get login failure, which is 18456 error. Okay, now let me show you now. Okay, now go to the server. I'm going to create a login for Mark now. New login. And I'm going to create a Windows login. So select Windows authentication. Click on search and where it was created, where the user is created in the computer only, right? So what is the username? Mark. Check names. As user is already created, you will get the Mark name and click OK. I don't want to give any access to Mark. I'm just going to create a login for him and click OK. Now Mark account is created in the logins list, right? Now tell me guys, everyone, whether Mark can connect to SQL Server or not now in this security
Yes.
context.
Yes.
He
Yes.
can connect,
Yes.
but he can't access the
Why?
database login because he didn't give the access to
No, that is different part. That is different part. Whether he can connect to SQL Server or not.
yeah,
He
he
has a
can.
Yes,
login
he can.
created.
Yes, he
He
can.
can. He can, right? He can. Now let me go and check whether he can or not. Okay, server name is same. Windows authentication, Mark, and click connect. See, earlier, as there is no account, he cannot connect. Now when I created an account, he can connect. And now he can connect. Connecting to the SQL server, that doesn't give you access to the databases. See, he is trying to access Amazon. It will throw the error. He is trying to access Batch57. It will throw the error. Why? He can
We have not
only connect
created
to
the
the
users, right?
correct.
We are not
Very
mapped.
good. Very good. He can only connect to the SQL server. Connecting to the Windows machine, that doesn't mean he can connect to SQL Server. Connecting to the SQL Server, that doesn't mean he can access all the databases. Clear right now, guys? Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
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 Okay, so that is how Windows authentication will work, guys. That's how Windows authentication will work. Earlier, see, even though Mark can log into the Windows machine, still he cannot connect to SQL Server. When I create an entry to Mark, then only he is able to log into the SQL Server. So that is how. But we didn't give any password to Mark. Still, he is able to. If you go to named instance, can Mark connect to named instance, guys? Can Mark connect to named instance? Tell me. Guess it. Type your answers in the chat. And Mark connect to named instance or not. Quickly, quickly. Type your answers in the chat quickly. Quickly, guys. Can Mark connect to the other instance, named instance? You can easily tell the answer. Okay? Or else let me open this. Your confusion will be cleared. I'm using administrator connection. Okay, don't get confused here. So Shanmukh, sometimes you are able to connect, sometimes you are not able to connect. Why like that? There are two connections. One is administrator, second one is Mark. Okay, so as an administrator, I have full rights. So that's why I'm able to connect. Now you can tell the answer whether Mark is able to connect or not to the named instance.
No, no,
No.
no, he can't.
No.
Someone said yes, you can
No.
still change your answer if you want.
No.
Okay, so no, again I'm saying I just created a Mark login in one instance, that is default instance. Okay, I just created means I just opened one door to connect to the SQL Server default instance, but for him there is no account in the named instance. If you are not part of the logins list, the same basic principle, you cannot connect. Clear? Kadir, is it clear? Sampath?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay, so that is all about your Windows login, guys. In the next class, I'll tell you SQL authentication and group authentication, group logins and all. Okay, so that's it for now. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, we are good to close the session for now.
Look, one question. In organization, AD server would be different and SQL would be different, right?
That is a
Different servers.
separate machine. This is a separate machine. Yes.
So all AD Windows users, I mean AD users will be listed here in SQL when we give access Windows authentication.
I'll tell you during AD configuration. Okay, there is a separate session on
Okay,
AD.
okay.
So that time I'll tell you.
Sir, may I ask a question?
Yes, yes, of course, Farooq.
Sir, so far the lecture has been delivered by you. I have come to a conclusion that in a production environment where the SQL servers are running, there must be a, a Windows server that is managing the all users. And in order to smoothly work on the SQL server, the user must have to be exist on the Windows directory as well as on the SQL
Correct,
Server, sir. Is it?
correct, correct. That is true. For now, that concept is true. Until we are going to discuss Active Directory, for now, whatever you said, that is completely true. Keep the same points in the mind. That's it.
Okay, sir. Sir, one question more. I was practicing the installation of the SQL Server,
Okay,
uh, and I followed the all steps you
okay.
delivered in your lecture, sir. But when I installed the SQL Server in my local machine on
Hmm.
a Windows 11 Pro, it
Hmm.
didn't require the .NET framework. But while on Windows Server,
See, very simple.
you what
See,
is the difference, sir?
nothing, no difference. See, always the latest versions will come with the .NET framework default. Okay, will come with the
Oh,
Windows 11. Already, the .NET framework and all is installed. So that's why you don't need it.
Okay, sir.
Even
Okay,
if you go to Windows Server 2022 also, no need to install .NET Framework. Windows Server 2022, we are using Windows Server 2019. If you go to Windows Server 2022, no need to install, as .NET Framework is mandatory for all the applications. When you install operating system, by default .NET Framework will come. So that's why we don't need .NET Framework for the latest versions of operating systems.
meaning by that, my
Already it's
let
installed. Okay, it doesn't mean you don't need .NET Framework. Already .NET Framework is installed. That's why you don't need to install .NET Framework separately.
okay, sir. Okay.
Questions, guys?
Shamo,
Yeah.
when you created a Mac
Mac,
account in SQL Server, right? Yeah, and you gave you gave a login access to
Mac.
SQL
Okay,
Server.
correct.
So if I'm the administrator on this box, right? If I go to Amazon database, can I see
Mhm.
Mac as a public user or no?
Why you can say I didn't give access to Mark on Amazon database, right? Till now.
Yeah, you did not.
Till now I didn't
So
give. So
when is
you can see now. See, if you want, you can see now in the Amazon database. Okay,
mhm.
under security, there is one more security in the database level, and in that you can see users. Can you see Mark here? No.
Okay, Mac is not
Until
there.
there is no
Mhm.
Mark, Mark cannot access this database.
So you can create Mac as a user and then don't map him to any database,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And he can
Correct.
be a public
I can
user.
see that.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, good.
As of now, he's a public user. He can just connect to
Mhm.
SQL Server. He cannot access anything. Okay. So once I gave
Okay,
access to Mark in any of the database, then Mark user will be created in that database.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Questions, guys? Kadir, any question? Fine. Okay. If you have no questions, that's it for tonight. Okay. Enjoy the break. I mean to say. Okay. So I'm leaving you. Giving 15-20 minutes back to you guys. Okay, enjoy, and we'll connect next weekend, Saturday morning, 7 a.m. IST. Okay, for US people, Friday evening, 8:30 EST, guys. Thank you all. Bye. Good day. Good night.